of the Lord, if we get to know what He's all about, then He's going to deliver us. But this doesn't mean that we won't be killed. You know, the worst thing that can happen to us is that we may lose our physical life, but we know that Christ is going to come and resurrect those that are going to, that have made a covenant with Him before they die. It says, "He shall call upon me, and I shall answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him, and with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." So again, I'm trying to keep a balanced approach to all these things because it's very easy to get discouraged by looking at all the destructive things that are going to happen. But this, to me, it's more a sign of encouragement now, because if you understand what God is trying to do in all this, if you understand why God is going to allow this to happen down here on earth, you're going to find out that we are literally living in the best generation of all times. You know, Paul and all the different prophets of the past, if they could choose to live in the time that they were living in as opposed to living right now, easily, hands down, they would choose to live in the last generation. Even though there's going to be a time of trouble in this generation that never was before, they also know that there is going to be privileges and benefits to this last generation of saints that it's not going to apply to any other nation, that it's not going to apply to any other people that have lived before. And I'm going to try to, in the next few weeks, we're going to, hopefully in the next couple of days, we're going to start doing a series. And we're going to put together the whole plan of God. You know, what are the issues that are specifically the issues that are being discussed in this judgment in heaven? You know, why is God allowing Satan 6,000 years of probation down here on earth? You know, what were the causes of the first rebellion in heaven? You know, when the angels came down and took upon daughters of men and different things different things like that. When you understand what's really happening, it makes it all worth it. Believe me. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. Dave.
Yes, you gave a scripture once, and I don't remember where it was in Revelation now, but it said that God will actually take the lives of certain Christians, because they will not be able to take the tribulation to come. Do you remember that?
I don't know if I said anything to...
It was a scripture.
Blessed are those that die in the Lord right now, just that they may be blessed from their labors and their works do follow them. Okay, there's a scripture that says, "Blessed are they that die in the Lord hitherto." In other words, there's going to come a time when those people that die in the Lord are going to be blessed, so that they may be saved from their labors, and their works do follow them. That's what he said. I think it's in Revelation chapter 6.
Or maybe it was your interpretation that made it God.
Yeah, maybe, because there are also scriptures in, like, for instance, in the 5th chapter of 1 Corinthians, he talks about how God would allow some people, the body of certain people. In other words, he said that there was such fornication in Corinth that wasn't even named among the Gentiles. He said it was so bad that a man would have his father's wife, would be having relationships with his father's wife. And he says, after you have admonished a person it was pretty terrible. But you have to understand that these people were under Greek domination for so long, and they were totally in a hedonistic or just pleasure-loving society. They were just totally given to different types of pleasure and different types of sex, like our society is right now. Different types of sexual aberrations. And he came to the point where he said that even after a person comes to a saving relationship with Christ, even after a person accepts Christ as their Savior, because they are so steeped in these habits and because they won't give them up, God will actually allow some of them to be delivered to Satan for the destruction of the body.
Strong delusion.
Yeah, but see, that's a different thing. The strong delusion is spoken of in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Right. But this is a little different. He says that he would allow he would allow some of them to be given over to Satan for the destruction of their body, that their spirit may be saved. Oh. Yeah, read 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Because he says that some people he is going to allow them to be put to sleep, because he knows that if he allows them to live, they're going to do something that's going to cause them to lose their salvation, to lose their salvation, basically. And so the same thing applies with what you're asking right there. One thing that I did want to mention, though, as to what the plans of the new world orders is, tying together Ezekiel chapter 38 and Revelation chapter 13. Remember, I asked the question, what happened to the rest of the bear and to the rest of the lion that reduced them to such a state of almost helplessness in Revelation chapter 13? What happened to the rest of the bear's body? Well, it talks about this is Albert Pike's plan for World War III. and we can see the stage being set right now. We can see Russia in line with Libya, Ethiopia, and so many other nations. The one thing they all have in common is that they're all Islamic nations. We can see the fires being fueled even right now with this crisis in Bosnia. The reason why I mentioned this before is because for over 2 years, the United Nations and the United States and NATO and all these people that are over there, trying to stop this war, so-called trying to stop this war in Bosnia. We sat by for 2.5 years and watched them slaughter and mercilessly destroy thousands and 10,000s of Muslims for the last 2 years. As if we were helpless and as if we couldn't do anything. All of a sudden now, because they're starting to bomb some of the United Nations safe havens, now we're ready to go there and put a stop to it. In fact, on the way up here, I was listening on the radio. They were giving them an ultimatum that if they don't call off their attack by 5 o'clock tomorrow, they're going to continue with their bombing raids over there, the NATO nations. Now, my question is this: why did the United Nations and NATO and the United States allow this to go on for 2 years and without any, without bothering to intervene? What made those lives? What made the lives of the people in Kuwait any more valuable than the people over there in Grazda? Why did we send 17 nations against the butcher of Baghdad, as George Bush calls them, and we couldn't even get anybody? We couldn't even send 2 planes over there to help the Bosnians who were crying for the whole world, who were crying to the whole world for help for over 2 years. On the news media, they showed us how thousands of Bosnian Muslims were homeless, about how their wives were raped and their children were being butchered down on the streets. Why didn't the United Nations do anything about that? Because it was ethnic cleansing. It's like we were saying before. It was part of this New Age cleansing campaign. There are certain people that they want to get rid of.
So they want to get rid of the Muslims?
They want to get rid of the Muslims.
And also escalate.
But the Serbs are, I'm sorry.
But to escalate more fervor amongst the Muslims in other countries too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly, because aren't the Muslims going to be
exactly
very
Against
intricate?
That's my next point.
Yeah.
That's my very next point. Ron just raised the whole center of the whole matter. In fact, it's really interesting. I don't think it's just coincidence that you brought that book that you just hear this. Bloody Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Bloody Islam is going to set the stage for the Third World War, because the nations that we just read about in Ezekiel chapter 38 talked about Libya. It talked about Ethiopia. It talked about a lot of these other countries. The one thing that they have in common, outside of Russia and Gog and Magog, is that they're all Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Muslims, of course, they have a fanatical hatred for Israel, and they have excellent reasons for it, because the Palestinians that occupied the land in 1948, they had been there for years and years. But when the Israelites or when the Jews came over there, they just dogged the people. They just took their homes and just pretty much made indigent wanderers out of those people there. And the only claim that the Israelites had to that land, they used the scriptures. They used the scriptures and say that they have a right to this land,
right.
even though they're not obeying Christ, even though they're not obeying God, but they have a right to that land. Well, the Muslims know that that's not the case. But see, they see Israel over there, and they see the fact that Israel has the backing of the United States. They have the backing of England and all these European nations. And so right now the backs of the Muslims are being forcibly pushed against the wall, and the only recourse that they're going to have is war, a jihad. The prophecy tells us in Revelation, Daniel chapter 8, and also Daniel chapter 11, that there's going to be a powerful confrontation between specifically Iran and the powers from the West. That's going to set the stage for World War III. It showed the battle as a battle between the ram and the goat. That's going to be one of the things that hopefully we're going to be able to put on the video. But Ayatollah Khomeini was famous for calling the United States the Great Satan. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Rafsanjani is not any more pro-Western than Ayatollah Khomeini was. But the Muslims pretty much, they know that the agenda for the New World Order is the depopulation of the Muslim nations.